Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 156 of the On Air Advocate. We're at the On Air Advocate. We look to provide education, support, and empowerment for all of those with different abilities, mental and medical illnesses, and their caregivers. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Tammy Flynn, and I am the host and producer of the On Air Advocate. And I am super excited if you are here joining us this evening, or whether you're catching it on the replay. Now, as always, if you think any of the information we could be talking about tonight could be beneficial for anyone in your network or your circle, please hit the share button and share the love with others. Well, as you guys know, the whole entire month of November, we have truly a full month of a focus on National Family Caregivers Month. And so I'm so excited tonight to bring you guys these amazing authors, some of them from the book Made for More, who we are going to be really diving into talking about caring for the caregiver and just mental health and wellness globally, for all of us. And so I'm going to start right here. I don't know how everybody's looking at it on their screen as they're checking this out. So we have here Chou Hallegra, if you can give us a wave. She is the founder of Grace and Hope Consulting. Dan Esterly, he is a consultant and a business owner. Catherine Hughes, now here's a big one. I'm going to try to get it all in one breath.
Do it.
Director of Family Support and Community Engagement for Achieving True Self, and she is the Caffeinated Advocate. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes.
So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Now, before we kind of dive into caring for the caregiver, mental health as a whole, I think it would be great, Chou, for you to start with. You are actually the I would say, the founder of the book Made for More. You're the publisher, the one who brought everybody together. And I know this is part of like your mental health series in your book, right?
Yeah.
So I would love for you to share a little bit more of how that came to be, a little bit more just about the background of that book.
Sure. So I've been an author for a little bit of time, and my first thought was to write the book Made for More on my own. And the more I start writing it, I'm like, there's more stories that needs to be shared, not just mine. And so that's kind of how the idea of making it a group project started. And as I started reaching out to friends, I think it was within like 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, we had 16 people all together. And I'm like, wow, I guess I'm not the only one who wants to share the story. This is great. So from just the idea of having one book, Made for More in mental health edition, we decided to make a series. So Made for More is the series, and then in that series we're having, the first one was on mental health. There's one we're working right now on chronic illnesses, which I understand that mental health, it can be, mental illness can be a chronic condition, but we're looking at more like physical health conditions that are affecting people. That's the next one in the series. There's more coming up on single parenting. There's more on there's also a caregiver edition that's going to be coming up next year. So the goal of this project and the series altogether is to share how people are rising above their circumstances and how they're taking care of themselves in the midst of what they're going through, and message of hope they can share with others who might be in the same situation.
And I know we're going to come back to you in just a little bit, because you are a caregiver yourself, and kind of diving into that end of it, mental health, as a whole, as we look at caregivers and, what they're enduring, each day. So I'm going to move on to Danielle. Can you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure. So I started off in mental health. I was a TSS and wraparound, and I worked with kids and adolescents with autism. That was really the bulk of my clinical work. I eventually got more into business consulting, really kind of using my understanding of people, group behavior, and how that applies to organizations. So I started more of a for-profit venture, but I always kind of stayed in the heart of what I did. I still volunteer on nonprofit boards, Glade Run Foundation, which is a facility for kids and adolescents also with a bunch of different backgrounds of themselves. And they also have a school on site. And then I also do some stuff for Pittsburgh Project, which is a housing and renovation nonprofit. So just a mixed bag of different things, but I really try and stay true to where I started, and really, mental health is kind of my foundation.
Yes, yes, and like you talked about before, you've kind of been on both sides of things. So I love that
Yeah.
you're able to share with us today as well. And Catherine.
That's me. So again, I am the Director of Family Support and Community Engagement at Achieving True Self, and also blog as the Caffeinated Advocate. A little bit about me, for those that don't know me, I am a mother, I am a daughter, I'm a friend, I'm a supporter. I am a caregiver myself. I've truly been caregiving for decades for my family members, not just my son on the autism spectrum, who is now 21 years old, going to be 22 in January. But I've cared for aging family members over the years. My father, until he passed away 10 years ago, my grandparents in their final years. Caregiving is something that has always been close to my heart, and I try to support other people with, because I have been there since a very young age. So I understand the need for self-care, and admittedly, I'm still working on it every day. Caregiving has definitely taken a toll on my own mental health and the mental health of other family members, and mental illness has been prevalent throughout my family, and I talk a lot about that in my chapter in Made for More, not just about myself, but my other family members and what we all have been through and how we have persevered and how we are still moving forward despite all of the challenges placed before us.
Yes, and I mean, I think that's the main thing, is us ending the stigma and really talking about it and openly letting people know that they're not alone.
Right.
And Catherine, I have a favorite. So before this, you guys don't know this, but Catherine's dog is sleeping underneath her. So Catherine.
I'm teasing your audience.
The book. When we come back, we're going to come back to the book and really kind of dive into that a little bit later, and how people can get their hands on that and whatnot. But we're going to, I think, go through with each of us just a little bit more about how we do, self-care struggles that we all have in that area as well. But Catherine, if you hear him starting, if you want to just push your mute button when you're not talking, do you know how to do that just on the side? Then we won't hear him. Even though we really want him to be part of the broadcast, maybe afterwards he could sit on your lap. Be right here. I'm like, what's that sound? I think that's him snoring. But Chou, I would love for you to start out with, telling the audience a little bit about your personal background with being a caregiver and the need for care, and kind of your layout each and every day of what you look at and how you persevere, maybe some strategies that you use.
Oh my goodness, my layout, my day, that can take forever, because no 2 days are alike, honestly. So I have 3 children. My oldest is 13 and my boys are 7 and 5. And so I care for them as their mom, and they all have different needs. So it varies from having to go to the school and talk to the counselor there, and sitting through IEP meetings, or running to the ER because one is having medical crisis, or scheduling 10 appointments in 1 month, or sometime in 1 week it happens. But that's what I do as a mom, and I love them, and I'll keep doing this into the day I die, because being there for them is means a lot for me. But outside of my personal role as a caregiver, I'm also a professional caregiver. I care for others as a counselor, as a life coach. So I work with people who are experiencing many type of challenges, including chronic illnesses, mental health challenges, but also caregivers. I care for caregivers because most of us as caregivers, we do because we have to, but then we don't take the time to not just to care for ourselves, because sometimes we can't even find that time, but we're not always intentional in finding care for ourselves.
Right.
So what I do for caregiver is giving them that safe place to talk, help them process, help them plan, and kind of reduce kind of the stress that we deal with day to day. And I often say, because I'm both a personal and professional caregiver, I have to also find ways to care for myself. So I have others who pour into my life and fill those roles for me as well. And for as far as strategies, I think it's just one, being intentional about your own self-care. And I know it's easier said than done, but I often look at it as, you know, I guess the analogy of being in the airplane, right? They often tell you to put your mask on first before you put it on the passenger next to you, even if it's your own kid. Because if you don't have your mask on, by the time you're trying to reach the mask to put it on them, you might not breathe. You might. So it is. If you keep the analogy in mind, then you realize that your own mental health is so important. If others depend on you, you're not being, available, even though you might be physically there, but if you're emotionally drained, you cannot provide the care that you want to provide. You cannot be effective in the care that you're providing.
Right.
So making it a priority, and also because it's hard to find that time to do it alone, I include my whole family in my self-care. We have reading time, or where everybody picks a book, and the kids can be all laying on my bed on the floor, but for me it's like 5-10 minutes that I can have a little bit of quiet time. I have my kids love to swim, so we do, everybody goes swimming. It's something we can all do together, but for me, there's also that time that I can take care of my body and rest a little bit while they're playing in the water sometimes. So being intentional, blocking that time instead of waiting for that free time to do something, it's about planning that time to do something.
Right.
Even when we're traveling a lot for medical, my youngest goes out of state, literally, for his healthcare, to see some of the specialists. So we're intentional in planning or his appointments either on a Friday or a Monday, so we can travel on the weekend or stay there over the weekend and do some fun things as a family.
Right.
So life as a caregiver is tough, but we have to be intentional, including more fun into it, and it's more downtime. We never have free time. It's never free time, right? Because you're 24/7 a caregiver, but you have to kind of having that mindset of every time can be a fun time, no, even if you're in the hospital. You can play cards together, you can read your favorite story, just infusing these little moments of fun and pleasure into your day, so that you're not always emotionally drained.
Right. And I think that the biggest thing that people can extract from that is that you need to plan and prepare, and you need to be intentional and deliberate about the things that you're going to do, or your whole entire day, your day is already going to be a little bit like this, but it's going to be like this if you don't do some proactive steps, like you're speaking about. So thank you so much. I'm going to go to Daniel next. Daniel, I, want to talk with you with your schooling and in background and working with other families and stuff. What have you seen over time? Have you felt like all the families you meet kind of struggle with finding that time? Have they shared those things with you, families you've worked with?
Finding time for self-care.
Yeah, yeah. Or does it seem like, the lack of caregivers being available to be able to help so that they are able to do those things?
You know what? I'd say a lot of the families that I used to work with expressed that to us, that self-care really was a hard thing to fit into their schedule. Kind of as Chou was saying, it's a hard thing to plan. I think our services helped kind of give them a breather from time to time. I was really glad to be able to come in and assist so that they can get some of their other things and some self-care done. But at the end of the day, I also felt like it wasn't enough a lot of times, and that families still really did struggle with planning enough time and energy for their own self-care. So I think it's a big issue. I think planning it is a huge thing, especially for families who have a million things going on. It's nice that we can kind of have services that can give them a break here and there, but I think it's still something that a lot of us have to really put a lot of time and effort into, and it's important.
Right. And, statistically, and this is pretty staggering, is that, a lot of times when we say the word caregiver, we think about that we're caring for our elderly loved ones, we're caring for our aging parents. We don't always think about that maybe we have gotten sick and we have to care for ourselves, or we are caring for a younger adult that maybe got into an accident, something happened, our kid, and all of a sudden, instantaneously, we became, a caregiver, or for possibly a child that was, born with a different ability. But they say that the only statistics that they've done is that about the average caregiver caregives for about 1 year to 5 years, with the median kind of being 3 years. But we know that's false, right? Because if you have kids, it's much longer than that. And at that 3-year mark, that over 70% of those caregivers need mental health treatment, therapy, groups, all of that at 3 years. And so I think about this for people who sustain where, if they get sick themselves and they need to have, that they're caring for themselves or caring for others for a much longer duration, where their mental health sits. Now, for yourself, because I know that you have had to do some of that caregiving, for yourself and finding your self-care, what are ways that you've navigated for yourself, through that to try to find those moments?
Yeah, and it's a hard thing, especially in mental health. I think if in my story, you'll see that I've gone through a lot of different things myself, whether it be sexual abuse or depression, and then coping with that through substances. I think in mental health as a caregiver, it's really hard because when you're talking to people, it can kick up a lot of the things inside of yourself, and it can make you project onto people, but also I think it can be too close for comfort sometimes. And so it can really, if you've had previous issues, even if you're at a good place, if you don't keep that in check, I think it's a hard thing to stay grounded. The one thing that I'll say that has helped me is really focusing, no matter what I'm doing, on staying in the moment. Mm-hmm. I know somebody said to me once something that kind of stuck with me, and they said, mental disorders, a lot of them, not all of them, but can be broken into 2 different categories. And, it usually has to do with the past, or it has to do with the future. So it's usually things that we haven't let go of yet, or things that we fear or can't imagine happening. And so it's that whole person-centered Carl Rogers theory of staying in the moment, staying in the present. And I know it sounds cliche and kind of easier said than done, but I think just consciously sometimes putting away distractions, putting away your phone, and just making a mental note, I'm going to be present right now, can really go a long way.
Yes, that is something that we all need to definitely do, because we do let the distractions of our day and the world get at us all day long, when, and we really don't sometimes cherish those moments that we should. And sometimes that robs us of some of that self-care, or needed moments to just breathe, like when they're like, just breathe. But we're so wrapped up in what is going on. So thank you, Daniel, so much for that. Catherine.
Hey. Still have a snoring dog. She's still under my feet.
But it has.
We not pick up on her.
Yeah, I know, but it's great. But when you're talking,
she's great at her self-care. I could learn from her, right? She's just laying there living the dream.
So for yourself, I know that we were on an episode, we talked a little bit about, we both have sons around the same age that both have different abilities, and so many of those, different strategies and those feelings and emotions that we all go through on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of just share a little bit about that background? How do you strategize? Is it that planning and preparing? And tools.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I know. I want to be like, sometimes the strategy is to just cry. And I get that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I do just have to let it out. I mean, I'll be honest. I wasn't sure I was going to make it on tonight because, like most other caregivers, I was having a rough day and everyone else was up here and Kathy kind of fell down here. So I was falling into my own trap and thinking, okay, so I'm going to go on a podcast and I'm going to talk about self-care. And I'm not a really great example today. I'm really not. Sometimes we, plan for that time for ourselves and things happen and, we don't always get the time we planned for. So then we get overwhelmed and upset and go, well, gosh, what now? How am I going to possibly manage this? But, when I have those moments, I try to step away even for a few minutes. And whether it's I go out and take a walk and get some air, or even if it's just taking a few minutes to play a silly game on my iPhone, just to kind of escape the moment and stop letting all those thoughts crowd my head and try to get away from that clutter. Sometimes even those few minutes away to get some clarity can help me strategize and plan for the next time when, I have that time period for just myself. So
Right.
sometimes it's just trying to step out of that overwhelm, because when you're in that state of overwhelm, you're not really effective and you're not helping anybody. So that's when, I get into those moments. I have to say to myself, okay, Kathy, you are not being effective. You're not helping anybody else. You are no good to anyone until you get yourself in check. So if you need to walk away for 5 or 10 minutes, no matter how important you think this person is, or, Chris needs this because he's had a bad day at work, or mom's not feeling well and she needs me to do this for her, and someone else calls me, hey, can you talk right now? I had a really bad day with my child and I need this resource. Can you help me? Sometimes I just have to know that it's okay not to say yes to everybody. Sometimes I have to say no to everybody and say, until I take those few moments first, to make sure I can serve you, I need to serve myself, because if I don't do that, I am truly of no help to you.
Right.
That's not always easy, because we're such givers. I mean, I think all 4 of us, I had this conversation with someone else in the disability community just yesterday on Messenger, and she said, we're such givers. And when you're a giver, you just don't want to say no to anybody, whether it's your family member or someone else that's struggling. I mean, goodness knows, Tammy, if you called me on the phone and said, I've had a really rough day with my son and I just need someone to talk to, even if I had the worst day, and believe me, if I told you about my last few weeks, I could form, what did we say, Chou? Like, we could form our own sitcom or reality series. You'd be like, good Lord, girl, right? But I wouldn't say no to you, because I want to give and I want to help, because I know what it's like to be that caregiver that's under so much stress and feeling like you have nobody to turn to and just needing that connection. It's very hard for us as caregivers to say no to anybody. But when we're saying yes to everybody else, we're saying no to ourselves.
Right. And when do you think, at what pivotal point did you come to in being a caregiver that you started saying no? That sometimes you step back and you're like, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I just can't say yes to this. At what point did that come for you?
Honestly, it took decades of my life, and I talk about it in my Made for More chapter about several things, and I didn't even reveal every single trauma that I've endured in my life, but I revealed a lot in my chapter. It's a very vulnerable, very transparent chapter about my life and my family, and it truly wasn't until a point where I was near a physical and mental health breakdown when someone said to me, there are 3 phones here. Which one are you using to make that call? That was truly the moment where I realized I just can't keep doing it all. I'm hurting myself. My mental health is suffering. My physical health is suffering. And if I don't start doing something for myself, I might not be here to serve other people. I might not be here for my own son. So until I get the help for myself, I'm not going to be able to help anybody else. It was truly that moment where I accepted help and accepted someone to work with me, and that person worked with me for over 5 years. And I truly had to dig deep into the roots of truly everything that stemmed from childhood, but also my own personal thoughts and feelings. And I had to dig deep into erasing that guilt and that blame and that shame that so many of us that struggle with our own mental health suffer from. And I think it's a very common theme. I don't know if anyone here follows the work of Brene Brown, but I love her work. And she does a lot with, that guilt and shame. And that was truly something that I had to dig into in my own mental health recovery. And that really was that pivotal point after accepting help and realizing not only that not everything that happened to me was my fault, because it wasn't my fault, it wasn't anybody's fault, but to also understand that I'm not responsible for fixing everything for everybody. And I can't fix everything for myself. That's just real life.
And Danielle and Chou, would you say, was there a breaking point for either one of you? I don't know, whoever wants to go first. Was there a breaking point that said, I need to start to do something for me. I need to get some help. I need to jump on a support group. Was there at some point that, you know, there was that day that's like, I need to start doing this?
I'll let Daniel go first.
Okay. Um, for me, it was pretty night and day. It was, you know, I spiraled out of control at some point. And there was a night where I just definitely felt like I was either going to commit suicide or spiral out with my substance use. And I literally made a deal with God that night. And I was kind of like, you know, if I wake up tomorrow, I'll take better care of myself. And I know that's not how you're supposed to be thinking, but when you're down in a rut, that's just kind of how your mind is. And luckily, you know, I woke up the next morning, and so I literally packed a bag that day and went checked myself into rehab. So that was really a wake up call for me, because I was really sick. I was on unhealthy weight from not eating. I mean, my heart was weak from all the drinking. My lungs were kind of a mess from the drinking. And they were just basically like, if you keep on drinking like you are, you're going to be dead within a few years. My liver was messed up. You know, I had some legal problems as a result of it. So just like, for me, it was kind of overwhelming, the amount of, to the extent that I let myself get away from self-care. And not taking care of myself, and kind of just going off of what Kathy said, you know, it's like you can't pour from an empty cup. And you can try all you want, but you'll end up just drained and down and out. So I think for me, it was a pretty obvious moment, but I think there's times too where it's not so obvious. And I think sometimes that can even be more dangerous when you're not aware that you're drifting away, and it's not black and white. And so it's just something I think we all have to be mindful of.
Mm-hmm. Or if we see others in that position, to be reaching out to say, you're not alone, you know, and raising those questions. Sometimes not just saying, hey, are you okay? But saying, you know, are you not alone? I know that in talking to people in the mental health field, they've talked a lot about even directly asking, you know, are you thinking of any self-harm? Are you thinking of, you know, committing suicide? And actually asking those questions if you see someone kind of in that desperation, or what can I do to help? You know, really getting them to open up a little bit more than not giving them the yes or no out, you know, a lot of times getting them to use a little bit more verbiage with you. Chou, was there a moment for you?
So yeah, when I think about my mental health journey, um, and I write a little bit about this in the book. So for me, the first time I realized I had to take care of myself was, oh goodness, 11 years ago now, where I was so depressed to the point I couldn't take care of my daughter. She was yeah, she was only 2 years old at the time. And I got so suicidal, and I was ready to die by suicide. And thankfully, I already had a counselor. So I picked up the phone and called her. And from the phone call to the trip to the ER, I ended up, you know, in a psychiatric hospital. And once I left there, I realized I had to be intentional taking care of my mental health, and I did great the past 11 years of taking care of my mental health, and I came a long way, and I'm helping others, you know, as a counselor and all that. And and it was 2 years ago where, oh my goodness, I'm going to cry, because it's literally going to be 2 years on Friday, on November 22nd of 2017, where I thought my mental health was well, and I was doing well, and was doing okay. I was healthy. I went to the hospital for a minor, well, it was not minor, but it was an outpatient procedure. And after the procedure, I couldn't talk, I couldn't walk, I couldn't move the left side of my body. And then I heard the doctor say in the hallway, she just had a stroke. She's only 33. What happened? I had a stroke at 33. And from that point forward, I mean, the past 2 years have been the most beautiful, the most beautiful years of my life. And people say, you lost so much in the past 2 years. Yeah, I can talk now. I still have trouble walking. I use a walker. I have the weakness on my left side, and a long list of a lot of neurological issues. But in the past 2 years, I also realized how short life can be.
Mm-hmm.
So I had worked so well in taking care of my mental health. I feel like mentally I was happy, I was stable, everything was going well. But here, the toll of caregiving, like Kathy talked about, every single day I was running in and out of the hospital with my youngest child, and then I was taking care of all the school stuff with my older kids, and then I will run to the office and do a consultation. Then I'm traveling somewhere else to speak. I was doing all the things that I love to do, that the things that I believe I was called to do, and I enjoyed doing every one of these things. But in doing all of that, I was not allowing time for self-care. So
Right.
mentally I was strong, physically I was killing my body.
Right.
And that stroke was for me like the last straw. Like, I can't do this anymore. It's no, I was focusing so much on the mental health was great, but my physical health also I needed to pay attention to that. So
Mhm.
now that's for me, that was my turning point, where I became very intentional in creating that self-care for myself and helping others do the same. So from that, I think when you and I talked back in October, I was saying like a year ago, I wrote a book on the stress relief method, because I realized the stress is usually the number one. If people think
Right.
about suicide, cancer, and all that, and heart problems, heart attack. But if you look beyond each one of them, the one thing that leads people to death is usually stress. The one thing that starts deterring, making a body, break down and deteriorate, is usually stress. So anyway, so from that, I became an author after my stroke. I started doing more, writing and speaking after my stroke, and helping others do that. So from the stress relief method, and I had courses on self-care. I did worksheet for people to help them, take better care of themselves. Because now I know it's not just, me saying that you need to take care of yourself. I'm like, don't have a stroke at 33, don't have a stroke at 100. I don't care how old you are, but do everything you can for it to not happen.
Yes. And I think that quote that is out there is so powerful, where it says, just because I carry it heavy, just because I carry it well doesn't mean that it isn't heavy. And I feel like for every caregiver out there, that is so true. That is so, so true. That, we're kind of groomed, right? To keep our head high. We got other people to take care of, their quality of life, their self-worth, all that, which are huge, huge things. And so usually when you see our face, it's not that broken downness, but everyone should just know, just kind of across the board, it's heavy no matter how it presents, itself. And in a short version, I just want to tell the audience my breaking point. So, and I know that you guys don't know this, but we're just going to add it to our group of four here. So back in 2015, because I have an adult son that has different abilities in trying to formulate different businesses and whatnot, because I am a serial entrepreneur, I decided that I had to cram everything I needed to do for starting a few new businesses into 7 days. Because I'm a single mom as well, so I didn't have anybody to, watch my kids, and I'm a mom of 4, take care of them, and that I was going to do all of this in 7 days, and I'm a hard hitter, and I was going to get it done, and I formulated successful businesses, and I could do it. And everyone's always like, Tammy, you need to slow down. You need to slow down. And I've had little hiccups, like where you get shortness of breath, a panic attack, those kind of things, a few little breakdowns, but nothing that would truly stop me. And so I went in 7 days to 5 different states, flew around, came back, and went back to work. Got in like 11 o'clock at night and went back to my business at 8:30 that next morning. And as I was sitting there, I'm like, I don't feel right. So speed up, drove myself home, speed up. My mom comes over, maybe you just need to lay down. Maybe you need to do this. I woke up a few hours after falling asleep to profuse sweating. And when I went to grab my phone to call 911, my toes were numb. I ended up collapsing, passing out, crawling to one of my son's room, passing out again, trying to crawled my other son's room. And my youngest son found me non-responsive on the floor. And when I finally awoke, he was screaming over me and beating on me, thinking that I had passed away. And I vowed to myself at that moment that no matter what business opportunity, no matter what it is, that comes about, no matter the stress and the struggles of our everyday, that I will never, looking at my children's terror in their face and what they were going through at that moment, as well, that I need to slow down. And when you need to take a breath, you need to sit down and take a breath. Because he knocked me down like 5 times, and our adult bodies shouldn't fall on the ground from a standing position. That many times I ended up having to wear a heart monitor for 2 months and going through tons of testing and whatnot. But the long story short was that was God's wake-up call. He was like, you don't listen to anything I do, and now you're going to listen the hard way. And so I always tell caregivers, you need to listen to your body. When you're getting to that point, you need to sit down. You need to tell, even if you're at a doctor's appointment, you're not feeling well, you need to take that mask off, a little bit, because at some point you might be the one that drops. So on that, just wanted to share that with all of you. So don't push yourself.
Wow.
Just sit down and take a break. And guess what? All of those things that I was going to do, it was the Lord's way of saying, Tammy, that's not what you should be doing. That's not what you need to be doing right now. And I didn't. So I put a pause on that. That was back in 2015. So I want to go around before we wrap up, for you guys to maybe lend to the audience maybe one key thing as a caregiver to remember. And then if there's anything that you would like to add about the book Made for More. And then we're going to tell the audience how can they, get a hold of that or view that. I know you guys have an online version, right, of that as well. So Catherine, we're going to start with you.
All right. So I'm going to put it as 3 words, and I'm going to try to say it without crying, because as I said, I've had a really bad few weeks, and it's very easy to fall back into that. I feel guilty because I can't do all the things all the time. The 3 words I have for the audience tonight are: give yourself grace. Be good to yourself, be kind to yourself. Like you said, sit down, take that break, recognize that it truly is okay to say, I've kind of had it up to here right now. I need those few minutes. I need that time for myself. But you also need to forgive yourself for needing that and not feeling guilty. So I would definitely say my 3 words for the audience tonight are: give yourself grace. As far as my chapter or, things that I've written about in my chapter, I do give some extra strategies, but I didn't go a lot into strategies in my chapter, because something that I think is important for everyone is remembering that self-care is what you make of it and what's important to you. So we get so easily caught up in, well, what is self-care? Well, it means taking a bubble bath and taking a chocolate bar in with you and maybe a glass of wine, and that's self-care. Self-care is whatever soothes you and comforts you.
Right.
So it looks different for everybody else. So that's why in my chapter, I talked more about my story and revealed a lot of different things that people might identify with. But I didn't go as much into strategy, because I truly believe self-care is something that's so personal, and no 2 people are going to look completely alike in how self-care is delivered for them.
Right. Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome.
Love it. Daniel.
I got myself unmuted there. I would say it's probably just the serenity prayer. It's taking things one day at a time and realizing what you can change and what you can't, and being okay with that. I think as caregivers, it's we have the Superman ego sometimes where we want to fix everything, even if it's out of our control. And I think it's like, kind of going off of what Catherine's saying, it's hard sometimes to know that balance. So I think it's just, letting go of what you can't control and realizing what you can, and being okay with that.
And the book, what did you find so unique within, whether your chapter or just within the book in itself?
I think just in general, the one thing I found really refreshing and interesting is just how you can have a project like this and have so many people from different walks of life and background who might not meet or talk otherwise really get together and do something awesome here. And so to me, that was just really refreshing to kind of leave, we all come from like different worlds and backgrounds, and kind of leave your identity at the door and walk into this as brothers and sisters and put something cool like this out there. So to me, that was the most meaningful part to me.
Love it. Thank you so much, Danielle. And I'm telling you, we should recite all these things when we're done. So I hope if anyone's listening or afterwards, we need to put this in the comments for everyone to take note and remember. Okay, Chou.
I think one thing I'll leave the listeners, the caregivers in general, is that you don't have to do it alone. And I'm like you, Tammy, I'm a single mom. I had 3 kids. So like naturally, I feel like I'm always doing it alone. And it took a lot out of me because again, that natural caregiver, like Kathy talked about, I want to be the one helping and giving care. So I wasn't always receiving care. But there is, there are programs around, and that you can, ask your doctor, ask your children, your loved ones, therapists, what supports are available for caregivers in your area. I had to be willing to do that. It wasn't always easy, but it took me even a while to accept home health aid for my son. Although I knew that physically I couldn't do it all. I couldn't be in the hospital and I work at the same time. I remember even taking him, he had a 24-hour EEG being done. And I took him to work with me with wires in his head and wrapped up because I had this meeting. I feel like, you didn't have to bring him. Like, well, I couldn't be 2 plus at once. Right? I had to do something. So don't be me. This is the things that I've done in the past. I'm like, oh, I feel guilty about that. But now, like Daniel also said, I realized the things you cannot change. I had to come to the point, like Tammy, I cannot do it all. I gave up being, working for other people because I knew I couldn't do that well and be a mom well and be the caregiver that I needed to do. And it came with a lot of guilt at first, but then realizing that what was most important to me were my kids. And I'd rather have, I stay home and eat ramen noodles, than be stressed and have another stroke. It's not worth it at the end of the day. So, but knowing that you don't have to do it alone, reaching out to support that's available to you, whether it's, it's getting an aide or a nurse through your agency, through medical assistance or your insurance company, getting a TSS, getting even respite care, like ask the providers in your area what's available and take full advantage of it. You might feel like, well, I don't want to take away from someone who might need it. Well, there is, I know there's shortage of staff everywhere, but if you are blessed to be able to access to help, use it now because your mental health depends on it, but also you need to be well so you can take care of your children and your loved one, for long term.
Right. And with the book, I mean, you being kind of the piece of the puzzle that brings everybody together, I think that it's so unique that the book has so many different authors. How many authors does it have in it?
16 total.
16 different authors. And so I feel like what makes it really cool is that everybody's speaking from completely different perspectives, right? I mean, there's groupings in there. What are the different kind of groups that are in there? I know there's people that are caregivers, and there are people that have had different, like substance abuse.
So yeah, that was the beauty behind the book too. So I reached out to maybe a handful of friends. They reached out to more friends. So there are people that I even just met for the first time as part of this project. So of the 16 of us, I would say about maybe seven, I think, or eight were really authors. Over half of the group were just, this was the first book. So even to see that people come willing to share the story in this project, that was just, that was huge. But we have teachers there, we have business owners, we have caregivers, we have few life coaches, we have moms, we have, I'm trying to think, oh my goodness, we even have it, I was also very intentional getting men. I remember it was when we got, I think the first 10 people, I'm like, we need more men. And Kathy brought me Daniel. So thanks, Dan, for being part of the group. So we end up having, I think, 5 guys all together. Trying to think, we have Dan, Al, Justin, Thomas, and Karsten. Yeah. We even have a mom and son team who actually joined the book together. So that was cool. So yeah, it's like everybody talking about, like you said, different walks of life, but it brings us all together to again show how mental health is universal, right? We all need to take care of ourselves, and no one is exempt. And this is both a global issue and a global opportunity for all of us to be better take better care of ourselves.
Right. And like we talked about in the very beginning, the more that we talk about it and more that we're open to say, yeah, I do have really bad days, or yeah, I do cry about this, or this does make me sad, or I do need help, the more it's going to become normal for everyone to feel okay to do it. The problem is that, you know, and I think that social media is wonderful. It is. It has so many different powerful tools in it, but it also has sometimes that mask that is put on that everyone's like, oh, well, they handle it so well. You know, I think that we all struggle with all different, you know, we all struggle with all different things, but just needing to know that we're not alone. So if people want to find the book, so Catherine's got the book, so you guys know what the cover looks like. Chou, what are the ways? What are all the ways that you can find it?
You can get the both the ebook and the print on there. But we just did something really cool that at least we think it's cool. If you go on my website, Grace and Hope Consulting, there is a tab on there's for books. On the books, you're going to see Made for More. If you click on Made for More, you get the little summary of the book, and then there's a list of all the authors. If you click on the author's name, each one, you get a little short video about who they are, why they joined the project. You get a little graphics, you know, little quotes that from the book, you know, that's specific to that author, and then the bio at the end. So you get to actually get to know those people, these people, all of us who wrote the book. And on there as well, when you click, you can purchase the book as well. The link will take you to Amazon. But I think it's cool that you can actually meet the authors, you know, on that platform, you know, before you read the book or while you're reading the book. It doesn't matter which one you do first, but you can get to meet each one of us that way.
That is awesome. And can we drop in the comments below this Facebook Live just the different links for Amazon, your website? Personally, if you guys have any of your own pages, you know, I know that you all do kind of your own thing. So please feel free when we're done with this to drop those below. But I want to thank you all for taking, you know, this time out, 45 minutes out of your evening tonight to hop on here with the On Air Advocate and share during our National Family Caregivers Month. It is so important. We all know sitting right here that in none of caregiving do we have something that is a sprint. It is a marathon. This is a marathon run, and we need to pace ourselves, and we need to have lots of patience and grace with ourselves at all times. So I want to thank you guys all for coming on. You guys can find out all of the information about these guys below in the comments. So thank you guys so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. And if you guys want to know any more about the On Air Advocate, you can head on over to onairadvocate.com and you can find all of our resources and information there. Or you can head up to the top of this Facebook page, hit the blue button, and that will let you into our private group. So on that, thank you guys so much. You have a fabulous Monday evening and a fabulous week. Thanks, guys, so much.
Good night.
Show that book one more time.
You got it.
Thank you guys so much. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.